How's it going, everyone? So leading into the release of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, you know that this is a game that I have been very skeptical of. I'm excited for Rocksteady to put out their first game in 9 years, but Rocksteady as a studio, a lot of moving parts and a lot of changes have been happening and have happened to Rocksteady since they put out their last game, and if you want to even think of them as the Rocksteady of old, I don't know how smart that is, given that Batman Arkham is one of the most revered franchises of all time. If you go in with that level of hype and anticipation into Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, you might be setting yourself up for disappointment, and there's a lot of other things that we've talked about, which I'll retread some of it. Now, before we get into this video, I just want to ask you guys, please like this video and do leave a comment with your thoughts. It really does help out the channel a lot, and it is much appreciated. But let's talk about the main thing. As noted, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is out in a few days, and press still haven't received codes for the game. Reviewers won't have time to properly play the game before its release next week. Guys, that is always a red flag. It is very much a red flag. If you want to think about one instance that I can remember of reviewers not getting codes for something and then it just turned out to be disastrous, it actually happened with Last of Us Part 1 on PC, I believe. And if you remember, Last of Us Part 1 on PC was an absolute disaster and a train wreck. The game is great now, and you know, if you want to play Last of Us on PC, knock yourself out. It's a great experience, but the launch of that game was an absolute disaster, and I'm not saying Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is going to be that, but that is one glaring example that does stick out in my memory. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, again, the game is out in just a few days. February 2nd is the date that is the official release, but WB is going max greed with this game, and they're doing the $70 price tag, they're doing the early access gimmick, and they're doing battle passes with the game, seasonal battle passes, which is just wild. I get it, it's just cosmetics, but Suicide Squad is the first real example of what David Zaslav has alluded to when he talked about monetizing these games for a long period of time. They've got a large audience that are playing these games, and you know somebody like Zaslav, is he gonna be playing video games left and right and have his finger on the pulse of what the consumer really wants? No, they're trying to make the most amount of money possible, and I can see from his lens and the higher ups and the decision makers, they're being like, hey, we have this infrastructure and this audience of people that play these games and buy these games in millions and millions of copies. How do we monetize them for the longer period of time? Oh, it's by doing things like $70 games. It's like, oh, doing things like having early access baked in, doing battle passes. We can continue to charge them money for years and years and years on top of the base purchase. I can understand from somebody who doesn't care about video games, because guys, a lot of the times the decision making that goes into things like that, it's not made by people that are super into video games. It's made by the higher ups and the executives that are looking to, you know, make the most money possible. And with Suicide Squad, I feel like it's the first real glaring example of them trying to do that. Hogwarts Legacy was a $70 release. It had the early access gimmick baked into it, but it didn't have any egregious monetization on top of that. And I don't know if Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League's monetization is going to be egregious. They've said over and over again, it's just cosmetic items. However, a $70 game, early access gimmick, and then battle passes, even if it is just cosmetics, that doesn't really sit right with me. And again, the deluxe edition is like $100 or something like that, and you're gonna only get one battle pass token. Who knows how long this game is gonna be viable for and how many battle passes there will be, but they also did note there's gonna be free updates, so maybe I should not push the cart before the horse and immediately doom-monger the game. But the review copy's not being sent out. Again, guys, that is a horrible sign of things to come. And maybe you're of the mindset that, hey, this is an always online game. Can reviewers early ahead of the release of the game even give a legitimate, you know, assessment of the game? Yeah, I can understand that argument, but you could still go through the campaign, you could still play the cooperative play, and still figure out whether or not the game is going to be good. Look, if you're not giving review copies for a game, there's a reason usually attached to it, and that reason usually isn't very good. It's one thing if an embargo lifts the day of release. Sometimes that can be a little bit of a question mark, but not all the times. That's whatever. If the embargo doesn't lift, you know, until release day or the day before release, that happens a lot of times, and a lot of times games turn out to be really good. I believe a lot of the Rockstar releases, embargo doesn't lift before the release of the game, or the day before the release of the game, I should say. And a lot of games in general, the embargo just lifts day of release or day before release, and they turn out perfectly fine. But in the case of Suicide Squad, Squad, if this is to be believed where review copies aren't even being sent out, that is a very alarming sign, and that is something that should absolutely be covered. And I don't know what's going to be the situation with the PC release of the game. I mean, Batman Arkham Knight was one of the worst PC versions of all time. Go look up, you know, old posts about Batman Arkham Knight and its PC version. That game was a disaster on PC. And you know, a lot of this is just straight up speculation. I can't speak on it outside of the fact that if review copies aren't sent out, that's always going to be a red flag. That's always going to be a little bit of an alarming signal being like, okay, this is something to look at, this is something to monitor, and I am curious on how this game is going to turn out. And you know, I and many of you guys have been skeptical about this game. We uploaded a video previewing this game that before you spend $70 on this game, and what was our comment section flooded with? It was a lot of people saying, saving you the time, save your $70 or something to that effect, essentially pointing to the fact of not buying this game. And the idea of this game not turning out to be great is so disappointing because, again, you're talking about a studio in Rocksteady. Whatever form they're in now, Rocksteady is the studio that brought you one of the greatest video game trilogies of all time. Batman Arkham Asylum, Batman Arkham City, and Batman Arkham Knight. And guess what? They released all three of those games in the span of 6 years. 9 years have passed since the release of Batman Arkham Knight. 1.5x the amount of time that it took the entire trilogy to come out. And after all of that waiting, if Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League turns out to be poor, guys, just that's another studio that is a shell of their former self. That is another studio that was at the absolute apex, the absolute peak at one point. A defining studio of the late 2000s and 2010s with one of the greatest trilogies that did showcase that superhero video games could be great. 9 years absent, and they're coming back with this game, not handing out review copies, arguable to be having egregious monetization practices, the early access gimmick, $70 battle passes. That's a lot to take into it, and Suicide Squad is the first real showcase of what WB's plan is going forward with their gaming. When you looked at the statements by David Zaslav and how they want to monetize their games going forward, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is exactly what they want to do. And if you think looking at this game, what it's doing in terms of $70 early access, that was already in Hogwarts Legacy, but I think you're being absolutely foolish. Eventually, they're gonna do a Hogwarts Legacy 2. Hogwarts Legacy sold 22 million copies. If you don't think it's on the table that they're thinking about, hey, how do we monetize the 22 million people we sold this game to? We can potentially sell 20 million copies with Hogwarts Legacy 2, but how do we monetize that even further than the initial $70 that they're gonna spend on the game? If you don't think that's a conversation that's happening in board meetings and wherever these conversations are held at WB, you're absolutely ridiculous. This is gonna be a conversation point, and not just for WB. You're gonna have conversations like that with all the publishers. Look at Sega just locking away New Game Plus behind a $15 deluxe edition. This is stuff that's gonna continue to happen. How do we monetize these games beyond just that $70? They're doing clever things, promoting early access as if it's actually early access. The game's done. You got battle passes with these cosmetics. You got New Game Plus, a feature that's been in the RGG titles in the past and now being in the deluxe edition of Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. They're gonna get more crafty, but obviously going on a little bit of a tangent, but I expect WB to be one of those publishers to be a little bit more crafty in terms of how they monetize these games. And Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, based on what I am assessing from the game right now, it's one of the glaring examples of that happening, even if it's just cosmetics. It's cosmetics on top of $70. It's cosmetics on top of the early access gimmick with the deluxe edition. Yes, it's just cosmetics now, but if this is a home run success, you don't think they're going to try to push that envelope a little more? You're kidding yourself if you don't think that's the case. But that'll do it for me. Sound off with all of your thoughts in the comments section down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.